In May 2014, a devastating inferno ripped through the world-famous Glasgow School of Art's West Wing. A painstaking restoration process was almost complete when another heartbreaking blaze struck. This film charts a tale of two fires.
It's the most iconic art school in the world.
It's not just a building, it's more than that.
It's Macintosh's masterpiece.
It's part of Glasgow, part of us.
Stupid things happen. Sometimes it happened twice.
Breaking news this lunchtime, firefighters are currently tackling a major blaze at Glasgow's historic School of Art. Strathclyde Fire and Rescue say 5 fire tenders are at the scene.
We called out just before 12:30 and initially we were called to a fire in the basement and it has been significantly spread within the building. The extent of the damage at this point I couldn't describe.
Is unique, a working art school and a work of art. Students were making work for their end-of-year degree shows and had to abandon the work when the fire started.
Just thought it was a drill or something, and all of a sudden just saw like this huge cloud of smoke coming down the other corridor, and then that was when I was like, oh, this is real.
It was just surreal. It was happening, but it wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. A lot of people were just standing in stunned silence. There were some people who were crying.
Nobody knew what to say. I think everyone was just so shocked. I remember holding onto these railings because I was shaking.
It's a very black day. We're going to have a lot of things to do and think about now. We have no more information than the fire chief is giving you. We're waiting for the investigation to be fully completed and then we can try and start to rebuild.
I remember waking up on a Saturday morning, and it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I burst out crying. I'm supposed to be a man's man, now you don't cry, but I just realised we've lost a loved one building.
Still smouldering, but still standing. Knowing the importance of this building, firefighters fought round the clock to save it, and their efforts have paid off. Most of the structure has been saved. The actions of the fire crew have been described as heroic.
This is the remains of the library. Quite a sad sight to see. I've seen photographs and it is a beautiful looking building, well, it was a beautiful looking room to it, so to see that it is quite sad. I'm always shocked by the power of fire. Always shocked with it. It just takes hold of things so fast and fiercely. It can do an awful lot of damage in a very short time. The amount of students actually crying at a building, it must have meant an awful lot to them to get upset as much as that.
If you ask my feeling about working in the building, it was one of pleasure and satisfaction. It was one of the best designed schools in the world. Like all Mackintosh's work, he strove hard to make every part of the buildings he made satisfying to the user. You could tell his genius from his corridors. Mackintosh made his corridors pleasant places to be. He designed not only the buildings, but the furniture, the light fittings, clocks. And there was no space in the art school building that he did not make interesting.
It's a lot to take in. Yeah. I mean, a part of me wants to say it's kind of like a film set almost, but it's really real.
We can leave that on top.
Lying in that space was kind of important for me. I think it was good to have that kind of closure, I guess.
Can we rebuild it? How should it be rebuilt? What's its future?
What do you do when a forest burns down? All you can do is plant new young trees, and that takes time to grow and to establish, and it will not overnight create an image of what was there. That's impossible.
I'm tempted to rebuild as it was. Yes, it's a replica, but it's an iconic replica.
Let's not forget that buildings are new once, and that there might not be anything wrong with the library being new once again.
Do you have in Scotland craftsmen, people able to do things in the same way Mackintosh men were able to do?
Well, I mean, obviously, you're never going to get from my mouth the idea that there isn't something that Scots can't do, so I imagine the simple answer is yes, hundreds of them.
According to today's report, it began in a basement studio. Student in Studio 19 using spray foam too close to a projector. It ignited foam panels in the room and spread up to another studio above. There, the fire spread rapidly up through the building's original ventilation ducts to the Macintosh library on the first floor.
It was an error of judgment which led to an unfortunate accident. The error of judgment was to be using a spray can in a studio environment. It's against the rules. We were in the process of installing a mist suppression system. We were 2 to 3% away from completing the system. But in the last area, we found asbestos. And because it was in the run-up to the degree show, that was not the moment to take the asbestos out of the building. You couldn't close the building down. Unfortunately, the 23rd of May was just before we got the system commissioned.
What a sad state the Macintosh is in. I hope we can help fix it. I wish that I could turn back time and fix it. But unfortunately, I'm not sure. But I can always pop in here and see what I can do. Give me a minute.
The library is a masterpiece of spatial composition. The taut, vertical masculine lines, an effect so splendidly conceived that it's in every book of modern architecture.
When you made your way into the library, it was almost being like in another world. It was quite difficult often to concentrate on what you were actually reading because the space itself was so beautiful and things would often catch your eye in terms of the play of light as it came through the windows. But the structure of the library was almost cathedral-like. It encouraged you to aspire. You felt as if you were part of something much bigger.
The library was one of my most favourite places. I don't know if this is true, but somebody told us they called the library the Magic Forest because it was all wood and colours. I'm not saying I've ever done this, but probably done it a couple of times, sat there with my pieces because it was lovely and quiet and it was just a beautiful place to be.
There are several benefits from the archaeological process, not least the retrieval in a systematic fashion of those objects that Glasgow School of Art want, the books and certain known artefacts such as the clock and the light fittings, some of which have actually begun to appear. The site is 11 metres square, these are the windows, and here is the doorway in. Basically, the whole of the excavation process relies on expressing the site as a series of 1 metre grids. I'm not here to rewrite architectural historians or anything like that, but I can add some information about the structure because it's now in pieces in my hands, as it were. So that our specialists can talk a little bit more about the quality of the carpentry itself, often debated but now proven one way or another. So it's nailed together, glued together, mortise and tenon, dovetail joints or whatever. So that's the idea.
See, the sort of
cross square decorative design there. We think that those are parts of the original Macintosh lanterns that were hanging from the centre of the ceiling, because you can see the decorative elements that make them quite distinct. So to have panels of those having survived, I think we'll be able to, you know, bring those back to life, restore them, put them back together, and hang them back in the library again.
Welcome to Morning Call with me, Kay Adams, on Friday the 30th of January. Oh, it's been a long old month, January, hasn't it? It really has. But hopefully February is going to get off to a good start.
My job title here is Senior Project Manager for the restoration of the Macintosh. Andrew, how are you? I'm in place to liaise with the architect, the engineer, the conservators that will be brought in, the statutory bodies that are going to be looking over our shoulders. So we'll have the council, building control, health and safety. There's a lot of new surface wiring that's appeared actually in the last week, but this is to do with a temporary fire alarm. This gives us temporary protection because despite the fact we've had the worst thing that could ever happen, an empty building is an even bigger risk than one with people in it. We're still in the process here of taking down any loose and friable material. Underneath all of these dust sheets, we've got a lecture theatre that's pretty well intact. More than half the building is only soot and smoke damaged. So we've lost 6 or 7 spaces. The library is obviously the big thing that we lost. I think we can make this a positive project for Glasgow. I think we can take things from this and we can push the boundaries on what we're doing here. So the timeline we have from here is we are interviewing 5 sets of architects and their associated design team members in March. The brief that has gone out goes somewhere along the lines of we wish to faithfully restore the Macintosh building, but we wish to faithfully restore it as a working 21st century art school. We want this to imbue the spirit of what Macintosh's genius gave us over 100 years ago, but we wanted to work in 50 years' time as still pretty well a state-of-the-art art school.
At 28, Macintosh, nicknamed Toshy, wins the competition to design Glasgow's newest school of art. Macintosh, over the dozen years the school is building, continually modifies his plan. The plans to complete the School of Art begin to face the censure of committee logic. The governors, long suffering from the ability of Macintosh to keep modifying, insist that he brings the building home within the budget of their limited funds. Here are portcullis to draw and lower canvases too big for the director's stairs. Macintosh leaves nothing, however small, to chance.
Keep coming. That's looking out the window again, trying to get all that light on your face. That's just turn up a bit more, please, David. Thanks.
You can imagine Macintosh was in this room like this before the carpenters came in. Macintosh was kind of saying, I can almost do magic here. I can take ordinary pieces of timber and I can make them transcend into something, into an idea which is greater.
You do have to recreate the magic then, you have to follow that exact design.
What we're saying is, now that we know how that's done, we think it's possible for that to be reconstructed.
What does a Macintosh interior look like? You must try to visualize a white room with white furniture or black furniture. Wall panels, the panels white, unless they have received decoration. And that decoration like nothing ever seen or dreamt up before. Long lines, gently bending as if in a breeze, and leading up to buds, or a ball of blossom or foliage only, on the precise edge between stylized nature and total abstraction.
There is probably no more important conservation architecture project in Europe than Glasgow School of Art. We are slowly but surely moving towards, in the ideal world, 100% knowledge of exactly how the library was put together. From the archaeology, from research, from archives, we are piecing together to rework and to reconstruct the building.
So we're in the studio just next to the library, and this is where all the timbers that survived the fire are kept at this very moment. In the library, we're really trying to get things right, like I would say almost a millimeters, so it will be perfectly reconstructed. Today I'm here to measure the ceiling just because this is like a missing piece for me. So this is the grid that people could see when they're looking up. Most likely those 2 layers of boards are original, so this is the original floor that we are really looking for. And all of this was stained dark color, so we need to establish what color we're going to apply to the new timber to achieve the same color. This is definitely a dream job for many people, and I really feel privileged that I can bring the library back for the people of Glasgow, so that's definitely a great thing to do.
Mackintosh was a true innovator. He had, I think, a great feeling for all his materials. He knew the things that you did with wood. He went to the very best cabinet makers. He didn't really want anything that was just ordinary. Not because he wanted to be an original, but because he was naturally an original.
It's the kind of project that every woodworker kind of dreams of. Our Olympic Games in woodwork. It just feels like you're bringing something back to life again. It's got to be done to replicate everything as it was precisely in 1910. And there's certain methods of working which are very traditional, and we've just got to revert to those methods. The final crowning glory will be the carved pendants going in. So when they go on site, that'll be like the last thing to go in. It'll be pull the whole thing together.
This project means a lot for me because I feel like I put a lot of my personality in the job. When you work with hands, you always put a little bit of yourself, and that's why it's unique.
Every single timber pendant had a slightly different pattern, and that was the most intricate element of the room. Most of the money that Mackintosh had allocated towards the library was probably spent on the carving. It was approximately £1,000 in 1907, so you can imagine that it was quite an extravagant expenditure. What we find out is the library was just nailed together with thousands and thousands of nails. It was not really too much of an elaborate kind of construction techniques. Some people compare it to like a shop fit out. looking at, there are two photographs. One on the right hand side is taken in 1910, and you can see how light it appears, while this photograph was taken in 2014, and it is just so much darker. We will not be recreating any of those layers. We will be giving people back as Macintosh saw it in 1909. I really hope that people will just accept it.
Generally, I do lights and restore them. These are the original pieces of the lanterns from the fire. You can see that some of them are in better condition than others. Because the way that they're put together with soft solder, they have to be 100% clean. To clean it properly can take hours. These lights are probably one of the hardest things in all my time making, probably one of the hardest things to make. I've tried so many things to try and work out how to do it. If you made something that was maybe looked a bit machine made, it's going to look strange and not right, so you've got to adapt and actually make things that are not quite right to make it look right. But I think we've got there. So this is the one that's been completely restored, and it's got the glass put back into it, been coloured, and basically ready for the little electrical parts to be made, and that'll be ready for it to go back into the Glasgow School of Art.
Like a Highland fortress on Highlandman's Hill, the school, though besieged on all sides by the humdrum piles of commercial Glasgow, becomes the most remarkable building of its time. Modern, uncompromising, one of the first structures of the modern movement. Facing north, the studio frontage, wide northern light-giving windows. On the upper story, they're 22 feet high.
These are just wonderful chances to get up close to parts of the building we just never would have normally. You know, you get right up to the beautiful little finial up there, which is very simple construction. Do you want to see the little ducat at the end? So you can't see normally. We think it's just a conceit. But look at that fantastic, huge stone. And it's just been really sweetly carved from the centre, imperceptibly down to get the water to shed off it. Because you wouldn't want the pigeons landing on ice. It's a lovely thing.
The west front of the School of Art combines the essential Macintosh. Medieval, modern, even Chinese influences are part of his unified scheme.
The fire damaged stone at the top of the piers, some of it's fissured and cracked, which we've got to take away in small pieces, but the small pieces that we take away we'll reuse on other parts of the job. It's not a quick job. Stripping these piers are massive pieces of masonry, and you think, how did they get these up here? I mean, some of the stones are upwards of a ton, and you've got 5 of these locked together to make a column. The shape of them, it was like nothing I'd seen before. They were built to last. The new ones will stand just as long as there's not another fire.
Be nice to look at. Be nice to look at knowing that my son's been here, he's helped me. In future years the grandchildren can come and look at it. And we'll say your old grandfather built that. Which will be good. We were well covered by our insurance, but obviously we're restoring the entirety of the building, the east wing and the west wing. So there's an awful lot of things we've got to do in both parts. I think we're just under £10 million left to raise, but considering we started off with a target of just over 32 million, and we've got about 18 months to run, 24 months to run, that seems like a real stretch, but all possible.
The artists were all sent a piece of charcoal from the ruins of the Mackintosh Library, and they've all treated it in slightly different ways. Jenny Saville drew a picture with it. Grayson Perry's created a pot and put the ashes inside it in classic witty Grayson Perry style. We're optimistic that we're going to get a good result, but auction is always very unpredictable, so I can't predict exactly how it's going to go.
At £4,500. 4-5. For aid online from Poland. It's for charity, ladies and gentlemen. 5,000, thank you. On the telephone at 32. £19,000. 15.5 is yours. I want to build this building. It's urgently needed.
It seemed to us important that this project would also kind of push the technological boundaries. So a building information model is a 3D digital model. You've got to start by scanning the existing building, take that information and translate it into a 3D digital model. So it has all of the architectural elements, but it also has the services that are in the building, the lighting, the finishes, all of the information. So this is the keyhole on this door, and actually even the screw holes in each area. And then we've got the kind of other layer of photographic information. Now as we draw it in this 21st century, we're starting to understand the level of complexity that he had to understand on paper. It gives you more respect actually for what he achieved and what he designed.
Our top story this morning, the strange tale of a Russian double agent found unconscious on a bench in the Salisbury shopping centre.
This has not been declared as a counter-terrorism incident, and would urge you not to.
Areas like this are starting to look good. A couple of weeks and what they'll start to do is they'll start to put the wall panels on. That's when the room starts to get transformed, because what you're basically doing is covering up all this old brickworks and dukes and stuff like that. So that'll all get covered.
Back when this was built, there was no radiators in here. They were introduced later, so I think we're going back to the original state. That's why we've used underfloor heating here.
This is all history. So we want to leave the doors, but get them stripped back to a decent finish and do any repairs on them, and then get them painted back up. So just along there, probably 3/4 of the way along, that was where the second half of the building was. It was finished in 1910. So what they wanted to do was create a link from first part of the building to the second part. So this part was built on, which they called the hen run. The reason they called it the hen run was because the ladies' toilets were at the far end. So to get to the ladies' toilets, all the women had to come along the hen run to get to the toilets. The amount of people that studied here, so you think of them walking back in here, and some of the areas that will never have seen like that. They'll have seen it over the years develop, even from the 40s and 50s. It changed so much. So they're going to walk in and think, God, how good is this looking?
Well, everybody does and should take for granted that for which they are given. It's been familiar to them for a long time and develop a nostalgic reverence to it. If it has been unusually beautiful, an unusual building, that reverence will be the greater.
And Scotland's weather this afternoon, most parts will remain cloudy and showery. Showers will become widespread and heavy with localised downpours. There may even be the odd rumble of thunder. Top temperature 17 Celsius. Tomorrow looking rather cloudy with heavy downpours and sunny spells and showers.
It was a normal Friday. It was always a busy project, so there was pressure as always. There was emails flying around. The World Cup was on.
Things were taking shape so beautifully. It just made me happy just to see the progress on site and maybe see the library in the same way as Macintosh have seen it.
We're slightly ahead of the game, I would say. We're a wee bit ahead of the programme. So pretty happy, everyone's happy, everything's going fine at the moment, definitely. Let's hope it stays that way.
On station, it was a normal Friday night. We were in and out of the fire station to some small incidents around our own local area. When the turnout came in for the art school, we thought it was a mistake.
I'm channel hopping and I suddenly see in the wall facing the windows a kind of pinky orange glow, and I hear the first siren.
I was about to turn my phone off to go to bed, and I got a message from a friend saying, I think there's a fire at the art school.
The first thing that you immediately think is like, oh no, it happened a couple of years ago.
I turned round and the entire East Tower is fully ablaze. I couldn't believe it. Again? This could happen again?
I'm just going to bring you some breaking news coming into us this morning, and we're hearing that a fire has broken out at Glasgow School of Art just 4 years after it was severely damaged in a blaze. Well, Scottish Fire and Rescue Service say the blaze is well developed.
I was lying in my bed, my phone went a couple of times with text messages, and it was a screenshot of the school art on fire. You look at your phone thinking, oh, this is the back of one. Who's sending me this? And then there was another one turned on the TV, and you know, TV is now, it's a rolling news channel, and I was just watching it, and oh, my heart sunk.
There's a great push and pull with the destructiveness that fire has. It's both very compelling and magical and poetic, and at the same time very destructive.
The heat from that particular fire was incredible, really. I mean, it was something else.
The fire inside the steel framed windows, that was like looking into a furnace.
Was it a long period where you're thinking could have been watchmen, like maintenance men, janitors, anybody? You can breathe a bit easier when you know that there's nobody unaccounted for within the building.
Started fighting the fire, and I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 minutes into it, the fire came out the Macintosh windows. They failed, and they came out like a blowtorch. People on the ground were really worried about the guys in cages, because they were feeling the heat down there, but the heat where we were was, I've never felt anything like it.
The O2 roof was ablaze, and then suddenly there was a great kind of crashing noise. And the roof caved in, and moments later there was a pounding on the door, and I knew that indeed was the police, and we were told we would have to evacuate.
We were actually at the graduation ceremony that day. The director had just announced to the school that the Macintosh building would be open in a couple of months. You can imagine the feeling amongst all the students and the staff there, but knowing it would be, you know, we were getting back in there, you know what I mean? And then unfortunately that happened the same night.
Toujours à l'étranger, le sort semble s'acharner sur la prestigieuse école d'art de Glasgow, en Écosse, 4 ans après un précédent sinistre qui avait ravagé ce magnifique bâtiment du début du XXe siècle. Et bien vous voyez, un nouvel incendie s'est déclenché hier soir. Il n'y a aucun blessé, mais les dégâts s'annoncent déjà considérables selon les bruits.
It's heartbreaking. Obviously there are assessments and discussions ongoing with the fire service and building control about the structure of it and its structural safety. Obviously all of us hope the building can be saved, but I think it's too early to draw any conclusions from that. It's actually quite hard to find the words, given what happened 4 years ago, the fact that it was so close to being reopened after the restoration, that this has happened again, and you know, my heart goes out to everybody associated with the art school.
I'm gutted, just like the building. I hope it's structurally okay and they can find the money to rebuild it.
Devastated. I can't believe it's happened again. So sad. It's such a beautiful building. I don't know what's happened.
This building is of truly world significance. It's just incalculable what the effect will be of the destruction of Macintosh's masterpiece.
You're shattered. You really are shattered. He's thinking, that took me, something that maybe took me 6 months to build. And a certain bit of it, and then you're just looking at it, it's took 6 years to completely be destroyed. I think there's a lot of disbelief that the Macintosh building was so close to being reopened and at its most fragile in a sense because there was so much to lose.
I think the way I felt was heartbroken. I still have yet to come to the acceptance stage. I can't accept it, up to the point that I find it impossible to visit the site. I haven't been able to go anywhere near the art school since the fire because I don't want to see it.
I'm angry at the fact that we've allowed this to happen. That arguably the most important restoration project in the last 100 years, on our watch, during our generation, that we've allowed it to go on fire twice. And I think it's symbolic of the poverty of our time.
question is now who needs to be held accountable for that. Is it Glasgow School of Art as a client? Is it the contractor? Are there building control issues? All of that will need to be unpicked and aired.
I think everybody's resigned that it's going to take years of legal argument until we know exactly what happened. I think it's a tragedy.
It's just this feeling of mourning after almost like a person. It was a big part of our lives, and it's not how it's supposed to finish.
It's always shocking to see it, and to see it at any angle at the moment, it's still shocking. We were less than a year to go. The building had really started to come back to us, and I think that's the tragedy. I suppose thinking about the last fire now, actually it was almost a walk in the park. People saw this from Renfrewshire, which is a long way away, this fire, so it was really an angry, devastating one. We will be on 4 sides of this building, basically taking off all the dangerous parts of high-level masonry. And what's been agreed with the Building Control Department and the Council is that we will work down as quickly as possible down that building. We're in such a tight area that any collapse would be catastrophic for anybody on any side of the map. So what they're doing is more or less block by block, taking it off by hand with crowbars and pushing it into the site. You can see they've eaten down quite far into the building, but at every stage the engineer is looking at that and saying, aware of sound place, now can we stop? We're all pretty numb, but at the moment we can't afford to be anything other than completely full on again. You know, we're going to be sobered and horrified and look back on it, but I think whatever we agonise over, there was nobody hurt. So that's probably the kind of sobering thought in each of these terrible events for Glasgow School of Art, is that at least nobody was actually injured as part of the, or worse, as part of the events.
This afternoon, local residents made their feelings clear to representatives from the Glasgow School of Art, councillors and others. There was a lot of anger and frustration, a feeling of being forgotten, but more than anything, lack of a clear timescale.
Last month's fire at the Glasgow School of Art damaged not only the famous Macintosh building, but a number of other properties. But 5 weeks on, the cordon is frustrating locals wanting to retrieve items or check stock. They're holding a protest at the exclusion zone today.
What do we want? Access! When do we want it? No! When? No! When? No! When?
This piece of metal is the definition between safe and not safe, and the line obviously stops 2 feet from our restaurant door, and if it was on the other side of it then we'd be okay to trade, but because of where it is, this is where we are. Just been about waiting to find out how long it's going to be for us to get back in, and that's probably been the hardest bit, is, you know, the knowledge, the information has been so vague.
Been out of my house for 6 weeks now, so very affected, you know.
Yeah, and you've been out of your business as well, haven't
Yeah,
you?
with business I can't get working. I just can't get my plans to start work or anything like that, so it's quite a nightmare.
Very sad, because I've been living here, I've gone for a long time now, and it's just like part of my life here. you know, I mean, there's nothing to brag about just now for the time being to tell the tourists that, oh, it's a nice building, you should take a look at Macintosh building. That's what I usually do when I pass by and you see tourists coming in by the pot of noodles. And you talk to them and you say, well, what's there to see in Glasgow? So there's plenty to see. Look at that iconic building. I was very proud to show them that. I'm looking out for the news, trying to listen to the news, but I've not. There's no concrete news. There's no end verdict to say that the finger points to. No, until now, I don't know what's happening.
Now, some residents affected by the cordon around the ruins of the Macintosh building in Glasgow are to be allowed to return to their homes and businesses this morning.
God, what a mess. Oof, God. That's looking very sad. Yeah, it's a very strange feeling, this, being back. Huge amount of relief. My feelings towards the building haven't changed. I still love that building. I don't love the institution. The Glasgow School of Art doesn't feel part of the community. And that's very, very sad.
Professor Tom Innes is to stand down as Director of Glasgow School of Art, almost 5 months after a second fire gutted the Macintosh building there.
We're all here because Scotland has lost a masterpiece of global importance. Now the building has been completely destroyed in a second fire, and many people, not just in Glasgow but around the world, want to know why.
There has always been significant public interest in the Macintosh building, so it's understandable, obviously, that people want to know what happened and, importantly, what's going to happen next. And I can assure the convener and the committee there's absolutely nobody wants answers more than we do.
Do you have any regrets at all in terms of decisions you've made? Would you have done anything differently, and do you take any responsibility?
I would take full responsibility at all times for what happens at the GSA, 100%. Yes, I have massive regrets that we've suffered 2 major disasters. In fact, I'd say more than regretful, it's broken my heart. I do regret, actually, not having engaged more fully and sooner with the local community, and I really do, because that was actually a communications mistake, and it wasn't intentional, and the perception that they had is valid, because even if we didn't intend it, if that's how they felt, that's valid. So yes, that is the one thing I do regret.
In my heart and also in my head, I do believe that the Macintosh building should be rebuilt. But I think it should be rebuilt as a working art school. I think that's incredibly important.
Maybe ultimately the best situation is that, yeah, the Macintosh building is rebuilt. It's a building after all. Let's spend how much? 150, 200, 300 million pounds on rebuilding this? The question is, should it be? I'm kind of agnostic on this at this moment.
It makes me happy in a way that there's so many elements that exist, that Martins never finished those pendants and they were not delivered on site. Now they are survivors, actually.
It's just the bones and wires and paper skins, and we miss it. No, I just wish we were back in it.
The building must be rebuilt. I think there's no question about it. We also have now a unique opportunity in that whole city block, which can create a relationship to that building in a whole new way. Yes, it'll take time. Yes, it costs money, but it's of enormous significance of cultural value.
The model kind of gives me the confidence that we could rebuild it. We're in a much stronger position than we were before because we have the building in 3D. It's there, and that's really quite exciting. It's still there as a project.
I really don't think there's another building in probably in the whole world that is documented to this level of detail.
What we have to do is to bring that back, and that will be the task, is to put the soul back in and the memory back in with brand new materials. We think we can do that.
You're a diver trapped at the bottom of the sea with only 5 minutes of oxygen left.